And that's loosely how learning is organised across the school. Kindergarten is a discrete stage, early stage 1, and it's very much about foundation learning. Learning to be at school, like learning to be here, learning to be a bit, I sort of crudely call it, we institutionalise your children when they come in, because there's all these routines, and it's a long set day, and then when they go from there into stage 1 learning, year 1 is the first of that learning phase, and then they go on to stage 2 and then into stage 3 before they depart us and go to stage 4 in high school. So I will probably jump in a bit while Iona goes through her slide deck. But what we want to let you know is there's big learning demands from year 1 onwards, and there's also a lot more social and emotional demands on your children, because we're really expecting a high level of independence once they hit year 1, because there's not the same amount of room, I guess, for as much of those nurture and transition things that we have in kindergarten, while we're moving them from preschool scenes into this is a classroom. This is where I guess that serious stuff of learning really, really starts. So I'll hand over to Iona.
Thank you for coming today. So as Michelle had mentioned, this is to let you know the transition between early stage 1 into stage 1. And so one of the main differences is that early stage 1 is 1 year, and the syllabus outcomes are covered in 1 year, and stage 1 is 2 years. So we've got year 1 and year 2 to meet those outcomes. The structure for next year is looking like, at the moment, that we would have 6 year 1 classes with a support class as well. We have a big focus on attendance. So if you can have a look at the screen, it tells us that 5 minutes missing per day equals 3 days in a year, and then 30 minutes late equals 18 days missed per year. The reason why attendance is so important is because that's what sets up the routines at the beginning of the day. It also is the best time for students to be learning when they're well rested, they've got food in their stomachs, and they're ready to go. And then for days that are missed out on, if they equate to a long period of time, over a long period of time, it also takes away those chances of developing those memories and those friendships that are sustained through being at school. Our school uniform is very important. It's what unites us and gives a sense of belonging in our school. We've got a winter uniform, a summer uniform, and a sport uniform. We've got the wonderful new developed second-hand uniforms shop across the road for any items at a cheaper cost, and we've also got new uniforms ready to be purchased as well. Hats are a big focus. If students do not have hats, they can still play. They just play in the shade. And a lot of students that like to play soccer or that like to run around will need to wear their hats just to protect them and make sure that they're safe out in the sun.
We've got 2 hats now. We've got the big red hat, and then we do have a cap as well, which some of the older kids find good if they're really participating in a lot of sports. It's a navy cap with our school emblem on it, and it's got the sou'wester at the back to keep their necks protected. So that's an option for children who don't like the hat or have got a sensory issue around the tops tie. Yeah.
So school resumes next year in 2026 on Monday the 2nd of February. For year 1 students, unless you're at Dabaska, we would ask for you to be taking your students over to the basketball court, where they'll be picked up at the end of their first day. They will be in their new classes, and that means the new opportunity to work with different students and to engage in our curriculum. And the advantage of having a different class is that it gives them new opportunities to make those new friendships and find other students that they would work well with.
We have done the Year 1 classes already. We've got those pretty much ready to go. We're forming the rest of the school's classes from Year 3 upwards tomorrow. The executives spend a lot of time doing that, and the deputies and I have done Kinder into Year 1 and Year 1 into Year 2 already, so those classes are ready to go. We go into classes from day 1. We're not like some schools that hold for a week or two. We will go into our classes day 1 so that there's not any mislearning and that those social connections start. You all fill in a form. Your teachers have given out some information around who their friends were, who they work best with, who they don't work well with, and we've used that as the basis of forming those classes. So each of your children will have someone that they have told us or indicated to us is a good learning buddy, and it's been also rubber stamped by their current teacher as being, yes, a good learning person that they can learn with and be social with. So there won't be anybody that's gone in without someone that they've elected as being a friend. So that's one of the things that we do when we form those classes. But we have broken up some bigger friend networks.
To create new ones.
To create new ones, yes.
So the things that you can do for preparing your child for Year 1, developing a sense of independence is key. So that's taking responsibility for their own items, for their own routines, things like packing their bags for themselves, learning how to get in and out of the car, especially in circular drive, being responsible for their belongings, making sure that they pack their items, they've got their names on their items, and that the items that they take to school come home as part of their responsibility. The next thing is social skills, so talking to your child and giving them opportunities to practice turn-taking skills, resilience. All of those skills are a big part of our Stage 1 community and our syllabus. And the best way to do that is like playing games with them, having play dates, playing sports together. The more that you communicate with them, the more they learn from us as well. And then shared reading and language experiences, whether that's in your home language or whether it's an English text. The more that you read with them, the more exposure that students have to reading, they develop much more of a passion for reading and interest, and it shows as a role model example of what good reading looks like. And if it's in a home language, then they still have that exposure to literature and they can still gather a sense of interest, and then they can come to school and select books that they are interested in, or go to libraries and select books that they would be interested in reading as well. There's our three main things. So the jump from kindergarten to Year 1 was touched on a little bit earlier. So the outcomes are stage-based. So that means that it goes over the 2 years for Year 1 and Year 2. So the reports, the grades for the reports that we have are limited, basic, expected, high, and outstanding. Expected is where we would expect students of that age to align with the curriculum over the whole state, so not just our school. And so if a student is getting expected on their report, that's really good. That's where we would like them to be. It shows that they are picking up on the curriculum, they're following along, and they're at an age-appropriate level. And then our limited and our basic is if they need more support. And then our highs and outstandings are if they're able to apply those concepts into new and complex situations.
And that's divided up. It is possible to have an expected outcome in semester 1 of Year 1, because if you sort of look at the learning, it's it's a continuum like that. At the end of Year 1 is halfway, and so at the halfway through Year 1, you're a quarter away along that journey. So if you're successfully where you should be, you would have an expected. If you're doing that really, really well, you might have a high there. But you need to be able to demonstrate to the teacher that you not only know the knowledge, but you're able to synthesise it and transfer transfer it to another area of learning. So kids might be saying, oh, I remember when we did such and such, and that gives us that knowledge that they're using, they're going back into previous or learned material and applying it to the next lot along. So it's not that you would be basic at the beginning of year one and you'd be at expected at the end of year two. You're able to, there's a goalpost at each of those intervals of reporting. And we do the same reporting that we've done to you in kindergarten. We do a report at the end of each semester, so one in term 2 and one in term 4, and then our learning conversations and goal setting look a little bit different too, because there's more curriculum knowledge around those goals, as well as the social goals that we set with them in term 1 and term 3. So there's much more rigour of language around curriculum from now on, and that's sort of just the overview for English.
Yeah, so this gives us our English overview, and you can see that the understanding and creating text is overarching around all of those other areas, because understanding is a big part of creating. So it's not just being able to read fluently, it's also being able to read, write and use language with a deep understanding, and then be able to use that understanding to create their own texts. So we have oral language and communication, which is about speaking and listening skills. It's not just about standing in front of an audience like me today, it's also about turn-taking, listening to others, working in groups, being able to answer different types of questions and being able to share information in different formats. The next one is vocabulary. So that is everyday vocabulary that we use, but then it's also subject-specific vocabulary. It can also be creative vocabulary in like figurative language and different types of words that make their writing and their spoken language stand out. And we've got phonological awareness, which is knowing their sounds that letters make, the print conventions or phonic knowledge, knowing how to read, write using the Australian alphabet. We've got reading fluency and comprehension linked together. So that's making sure that students understand what they are reading and they're able to not only decode, so read the words on the page, but also be able to think about the deeper meaning or making connections to those words that they are reading. And then creating written texts has got spelling and handwriting intertwined into it, and it's not just set alone as a standard, like their own subjects. And then lastly, we've got understanding and responding to literature. So that is being exposed to different types of literature, whether it's fiction, non-fiction, and all different categories within it, for students to be able to identify features of these texts, but then also an understanding of audience and purpose and character, and being able to draw connections to those texts or take a main idea and then apply it into their own creative texts. These are two examples of an expected Stage 1 English sample. So on the first one, on the left, we've got students using paragraphs, they've got sounding out strategies, and they have got a good formation of letters. You'll also see there's a learning outcome success criteria attached. We'll talk more about that later, but that's how teachers are able to help students understand what it is that they are learning and how they can mark themselves against making sure that they've met that learning intention through the success criteria. You can see in here not all of the spelling is excellent, but it is close. So they have used their phonic knowledge to be able to sound out words and then apply it in their writing. For our second one, that's an example of later on in the continue, like we were saying before. So this is a student that has a little bit more handwriting development, and that they're still able to make drafts and make edits, as you can see in the coloured writing above it. And they've got illustrations just to enhance their planning and also to drive home their ideas. For mathematics, there are three main areas, and then just like in the English, we've got the overarching working mathematically, which is embedded inside our three areas. So working mathematically is about applying mathematical concepts and using those problem-solving skills throughout all of the mathematics tasks. So we've got number and algebra, which is looking at things like whole numbers, numbers on a continuum, adding, subtracting, and forming groups, which leads into multiplication in the higher grades. We've got measurement and space, so that's looking at how things fit in the world. So looking at building a concept of what measurement really looks like, starting with informal units such as like unifix cubes, which then show that multiple of the same unit is an easier way to measure something, and then as they get towards the end of stage 1, towards year 2, they will start to learning about using formal units such as centimeters. And then we've got statistics and probability, with the two main focuses are data and chance. So looking at graphs and looking at probability. Our work samples for mathematics are usually used, bookwork is usually used to get an idea of where students are at, or for students to practice their brainstorming skills. A lot of the mathematics is hands-on, using concrete materials, exploring the world around them, building an idea of what math actually looks like, as opposed to just writing down numbers and formulas. This is to give them an idea of what you're actually doing behind all of that. So it's a lot of drawing, it's a lot of writing sentences, it's a lot of showing what they are thinking inside their minds to build that idea of how numbers and measurement and data and statistics really work. And you'll see again we've got our success criteria and learning intentions on those pages as well. All the other learning areas we have are science, where we look at the human body, we look at forces, digital technologies, and then working scientifically is very similar to working mathematically or working with English language, and it's applying that idea of questioning things, making a hypothesis, testing your questions and seeing what the outcome will be. And then for HSIE, history and geography, they look at their own personal history as well as Australian history, and they look at how communication changes over time. We've got creative and performing arts. These link into other areas, sometimes through history, PDHPE and English. We've got things like, we focus on visual arts, drama, music and dance, and often they are linked to enhance other programs. This is an area where students that are really creative can thrive. We've also got PDHPE, where there's a big focus on well-being, so learning how to be safe, learning how to care for themselves and for each other. We've got class sport as well as sports pro and swimming, and then we also usually have the athletics carnival about how to learn about how to move their body and be safe.
Just an update on that history slide, that's a slide from the old curriculum. The new curriculum looks at ancient lands, so the children will be looking at in year 1 and year 2 will be looking at ancient civilisations. So they will look at a component of their own history and Australian history, but they will also be looking at ancient lands, and then within that there'll be studies of China, Greece, Egypt, and Rome. They're looking at as that's the new history syllabus starts ancient lands instead of leaving it till sort of year 7. They backtracked it right down to very simple concepts from kindergarten onwards. But we're in an implementation stage. It's not mandatory till 2027, but we have started it this year and are resourcing it, and your children will definitely be using that new syllabus next year.
So for homework, students get sent out a homework grid. It goes out on a Monday and it comes back on a Friday. The homework tasks are usually more about building responsibility, building communication, and those areas that we spoke about earlier on in the presentation with those 3 main areas. That's what the homework focuses on, and it's to build those skills that we do build upon in school, but then again get reinforced at home. So when I mentioned before about learning intentions and success criteria, that's all under the branch of visible learning. So it's to help students to talk about what it is that they are learning. I'm sure sometimes you ask your child, what did you do today? And they said nothing, which is not the case. So this is to help them to know what it is that they are actually learning about, and then what are the steps they can take to achieve that. And so we look at the success criteria to show what it is that is expected of the student, and it's also for them to see where they can further develop. So they might have 2 of the success criteria and realise on the 3rd one they still need to develop that skill. It's good for feedback, both for the teacher to the student, but also the student to themselves. They're able to assess their own work against the success criteria that is in child-friendly language and see what it is that they're doing well and where to next. Some things that you can do for students to help reach their potential. We mentioned before, building language and vocabulary. So that's in an everyday setting. It could just be about writing a letter to someone in your family, thanking them for something that they've done. Or it could be having a conversation with your child about what you did today, what they did today, what they would like to do, what they enjoyed about reading, something that gets them speaking and listening. And then really a focus for reading and writing for pleasure. That's one of the best things to develop confidence is through competence. So if they are writing and reading with pleasure, that means that it doesn't have to be about a given topic. It can be something that they're just interested in. Anything that they want to read about or anything that they want to write about, that's going to develop their confidence as they start to see themselves as readers and see themselves as writers. And so that could just be 5 minutes writing each day, whatever they would like to write about. We don't focus on spelling or any conventions, it's just for fun. Puzzles, drawing, building with blocks, anything creative, anything hands-on, sports, board games, all of those activities where you're using a whole range of skills that are very important to the development of their potential. So when we think about conflict, we often think this is a negative thing or something that we want to avoid, but it's actually a great opportunity for students to build resilience. And there's a mental model as adults that we use about how to solve conflict in a good way and how we can solve conflict in a bad way. But as our students develop and grow, we need to teach them and give them those opportunities to practice that skill set. So we use restorative practice, which is a social emotional skill that gets students to think about what has happened, what were they thinking, what are they now thinking, what are they going to do differently next time? And it gives them that responsibility to take action on their own actions and think about how they could be more responsible in the future. And then we look at this also leads into dysregulation in the early grades. So one thing we find is that the younger students they're still learning about emotional regulation and how to make sure that they are responding in an appropriate way. And so the best way for them to learn that is through practice. So that means going through different scenarios. We teach them explicit strategies on how to handle difficult situations. We talk about strategies on focus and how to eliminate distractions. But then also putting that into practice when they are in the classroom, making a good choice, being good learners, means being responsible for your regulation. Some things that you can do at home to help support this are things like building friendships, fostering those social skills, things like sports, making sure that your child gets enough sleep each night, eats a healthy meal, and then we have a zone of regulation where they can monitor how they are feeling, whether they are very good, ready to learn in the green zone, or if they're moving down further to the red zone where they are completely dysregulated and not at a good time, then we know that's just a time for them to learn how to get back up into that green zone. There's a big focus on making sure we've got good sleep, good feed. All of these things will link towards being able to regulate their nervous systems better.
We had, for the older students that were transitioning from year 6 into year 7, they did a workshop with Nick Kenny the other day, and then Nick Kenny came back and worked with the parents at night, and that was his psychologist, clinical psychologist, and one of the things he said there's 2 things that kids need more than anything else, and it's sleep and routine. he had quite a lot to say, and we're going to get him in to do a workshop with you about technology. But he said, I mean, we know with our Year 6 students, they're getting back to need to have the same kind of sleep requirements as what kids do probably prior to starting school. But the bare minimum for anyone in primary school is 8 hours. And that needs to start early, because if you sort of let it bumping into sort of that you're getting them up at 8 o'clock in the morning, they will be rushed and stressed getting into school. So you need to sort of work back from probably a 7 o'clock rising, 7 o'clock in the morning, get them up, get them fed, get them ready and school ready and routine, and around that sort of getting them ready the night before as much as possible, and yourself. But that routine and sleep, we know that you cannot work sleep deprived. You know yourself, you can do 1 or 2 nights, but then you need to get back. And he was talking a lot about too this business of trying to catch up on sleep. That's not good. It needs to be the same bedtime, the same waking time. And if something's happened that you've had a family thing, you'll have one night out, that's probably not too disruptive. But you can't kind of have a sleep debt that you make up for at the weekend. And it's actually not good sleeping at the weekend, and sort of it upsets all your natural biorhythms. So he really, really stressed that, and about no devices, a book, and sort of that stuff around. And I sometimes put in the newsletter some things around that sleep hygiene, that there needs to be a routine in those sort of couple of hours or an hour and a half up to leading up to lights out, and the importance of darkness and coolness and the right temperatures too, and all those sorts of things to sleep. I'll probably do another something in the newsletter over the next few weeks. Just quite a good thing to have in the back of your head during holidays when all our sleep routines sort of change a bit. But it's critical, and kids can't learn if they're sleep deprived. So it was really, really important. Have you got any questions? Yes.
Yeah, I've got 2 questions. One is the scripture and language will continue.
Yes. Yep. Scripture is mandatory across the state. It's a state government policy that we provide some religious instruction in all state schools. Yeah. And community languages is because we have a high Korean and a high Mandarin population. We are given community language teachers based on our population, and yes, if your background speaking of either of those languages, you automatically go into those classes, and then the rest of you, we just divide up. We divide it around teachers. We've got slightly more Mandarin teachers than Korean teachers, again, because that's what we're allocated, and that forms in this school our RFF program, because otherwise we would have to have the kids out for the mandatory time for their community language plus release from face-to-face on top of it, which we made a decision would be too much out of class time away from core curriculum. So you're very lucky to have those programs here. They're cultural programs. They're not seen as being you won't be able to fantastically speak Mandarin or Korean at the end of your time here, but we hope that we do not put children off their languages, and we hope we engender a love for the cultures that are represented in our community, and some understanding of the children's cultural background. So it is a cultural program rather than just a straight language program. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
Sorry, I'm assuming you're sharing the slides?
Yes, we share the slides. Yes, they'll come out to you at the end. Yeah.
And second, like you say, really like the reading aids. My question would be, why are we not doing map scenes, like the map version of that?
You can do it yourself. It doesn't exactly meet the curriculum. And it would be too much time on technology for little people, because it's a very small time online that is recommended.
It also may not link up to what we've taught on that continuum.
Yeah.
So
it doesn't meet curriculum outcome. Reading eggs and maths eggs are loosely, and I say this word loosely, based on the Australian curriculum, not the New South Wales, and they don't meet outcomes even for those. They're just a snippet. They're a really nice activity for kids to do, and happy. They're not cheap. That would be another cost to you here. I know it's more expensive if you subscribe. It's about what, double, isn't it? It's at least double if you subscribe from home, so that's why we subscribe for the reading eggs, because it kind of is a good little activity we can intersperse. But we honestly don't have the time to put the maths in. It would take away from our own teaching time, and especially when it doesn't meet core curriculum outcomes.
But it doesn't hurt, let's put it that way.
No, it doesn't hurt, but it's rehearsing of low-level tasks which the kids don't really need. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions?
And with the class allocations, the children don't find out until first feedback,
No,
is that right? Okay.
that's right.
So it's not something we can start talking to them about?
No, there's kids that we know, there's some children that we know that we've got more critical transition plans in for. They possibly incidentally might have met their teacher. They might be sent on some errands or some messages so that they've got a familiarity with the teacher. Iona won't be on stage 1 next year. Actually, we're lending Iona to another school next year. She's can tell people that now. She's going to a neighbouring very small school to see what that content looks like. But Judy Hyland will be part of the supervision team on stage 1. Veronica Aspie, who looks after the year 2 part of stage 1, will remain in her role. And Jess Roberts, who's coming back from maternity leave, will be the stage 1 AEP on year 1, but she only works 3 days a week. So part of Judy's role as DP will be to oversee that whole team. It's a big team. It's the size of a small school. It's bigger than the school that Iona's going to. It's got 3 fairly key, and they're very experienced people working with the team. And the teachers, there's a range of teachers who have been there for a few years, and then there's some teachers coming down from the older students and some coming up from kindergarten into stage 1. And we do that. We normally keep teachers on a stage, just so you know, unless there's some absolute reason not to, for at least 2 years, so that they're competent in their craft on that stage. And then we do try and encourage them to get breadth of experience K to 6, because that's good for them and it's good for us, because they know what's come before and they know what comes afterwards. So that's sort of how we do it. And we split our job shares as well, K to 6 too, so that we try not to have one stage with a lot of job shares and another one with not. And that's not really as much about the kids learning, it's about the assistant principals that are supervising and all the back end that goes into looking after teachers. Our teachers all have a what we call a PDT, which is basically a performance review that they do every year. So we try and spread the job shares out so that the poor AEP that's doing their performance reviews doesn't have 100 of them, that they have a workable amount, and our professional development too, so that we can develop those teachers. It's not more onerous in some stages than others because there's a lot more teachers. So that's kind of that's sort of some background around how we play staff organisation, and it's really, really hard. It's hard work because I've got teachers coming back who've got children of their own that have got childcare and everything else. It's like playing human Tetris to get everybody in their spots. So any other questions?
I was just going to say, I just wanted to share,
Yeah.
you might not be able to say what class the kids are going to, but it's good to have that conversation with them. So I think I remember the light bulb moment in kindy where they thought their teacher would be with them the next year, so it's good to have that conversation knowing that they won't have that teacher.
No, they definitely won't have their teacher that they've got. Is there anyone going up from kinder?
No, we've got the opposite.
No, we've got the other. We've got some coming down, and we've got someone going up that'll go up with a group of kids further on, 2 going to 3, I think. Yeah. Sometimes we do that too if the group is really there's been not high academic needs, but if there's, for whatever reason, there's been high emotional needs. Around COVID, we did a lot of transition. A teacher went up with a group of students. So we monitor all that. If we get a vulnerable cohort for whatever reason, and it does happen from time to time, a teacher might go up with them to have them for 2 years. And if the particular group, and it's never a whole class, but it might be a cluster of kids that really would benefit from the nurture of that particular teacher for another year. So it's quite complicated. So it's sort of I think we do not use one of those programs where we put all the kids' names in and their ethnicity and their sex and everything else, and then ask it to spit out classes. We are not using AI to form our classes. We're using our own, and we're using sort of emotional intelligence at a really high level to form classes. So yeah. There was a question there. Yes.
Is there an expectation on the number of merits to achieve by the end of year 1?
No. That varies too, and it varies from class to class, because it really does. Like we would really like them all to exit with their bronze certificate, but it doesn't. And as I said to the kids when we've been giving out certificates, it doesn't mean that if you haven't achieved that certificate, then by the time you finish year 6 that you won't have your platinum by that time. It starts afresh each year, and some students takes a couple of years for them to find their sort of mojo and settle into school. And kids that you kind of had coming in kindergarten and then you're pulling your hair out with are the ones that might be up here as a school leader in year 6. So it's very. And also teachers vary too in what we ask for consistency, but they're human beings at the end of the day, and what I might decide is meritable, someone else might have a higher or a lesser standard. So any other questions?
Yeah. Sorry, lots of questions. I've noticed that at the moment the year 1 and year 2 classroom are sort of mix and match on the 2 levels.
And that's to do with my teachers and their physical needs. I've got a few teachers that can't do steps.
Okay.
And that's all that's about. Veronica, I don't think she'd mind me sharing. Veronica in year 2 has had knee replacement, so I'm not going to have her trudging up and down steps. So that's a year 2 class that's down the bottom. If I've got pregnant teachers, I also try and keep them down the bottom too if I know early enough in the year. So those sorts of things are often around the consideration of the staff that are on there, or a particular student that's going in. We might have a student that's come out of hospital or something like that, and if we know that in advance and we can do it at the planning stage, we do it. We have got the lifts, but the lifts are a nightmare to use over on this side, and we've got no lifts on the other side. So we've got the same over there. We've got some 3 classes that are upstairs, and I think 4 downstairs. Yeah, we've got them mixed. We have got some mixed over there, and that's, I think, again around staff need rather than student need. Although there might be one student there that we've got in a downstairs classroom that belongs to year 4 around a physical need. So we try and accommodate where we can. We're a bit stuck on that side because we don't have a lift there. Anyone else, any other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.